the special session to start it right now. Rader, could you do roll call, please?
Yes, Mr. President, Mr. Nielsen,
Here.
Mr. Rader,
Here.
Dr. Ramos,
Present.
Mrs. Reyes,
Here.
Mrs. Sashine.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's go ahead and take an opportunity to recite the Pledge of Allegiance, please. To the flag of the United
States of America
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God,
indivisible, with liberty and
for all. Thank you so much. If we could take a minute here, a moment of silence, give some thoughts to the things that are important to your family as well as to the school and to all the kids that we're associated with. All right, thank you very much. We have 2 or 3 items on our agenda for tonight. I'll start off with Dr. Freeman, if you'd like a minute or two there to discuss board goals and goal cycle.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. With the addition of the governing board, setting some goals for itself and being able to talk a little bit about their progress tonight, we've had a discussion about all of the goal setting going on in the district. And it occurs to us because, oh my gosh, it occurs to us that the cycle for the board governance team is a little different because you're elected in November, take your seats in January. So we put together a graphic to look at goal cycles. And if we could open that up, what you can see is that's perfect. Thank you. We've put together like a year and a half with a little bit of lead in, and the board being the left column. And so an idea that if you wanted to adjust your goals, you would do that in your January meeting when you reorganize the board and elect a president to preside for the year. And then around December, you could look at your progress along with, the progress of other members of the school district. So that column shows one evaluation cycle going from January to December, and then again cycling back to starting with the evaluation of the prior year, setting goals again down through that column. Now, what happens with the school district and the superintendent is a little different because usually superintendent's evaluation happens in November or December. And then the board works with the superintendent to set some goals. Those get integrated into the district goals, and the district goals are the basis of the monitoring report, all of the data collected throughout the year to support those ongoing goals of the school district. We spent some time in the year preceding to make sure that we get resources aligned. And so what ends up happening is through April, May, and June, we're putting all those resources together, then running that year. And so that year of everybody else's goals is in a blue box that's kind of inset right. There's a blue box that captures the calendar year for the governing board, and then an inset blue box that captures the school year, and the rest of the goals run on the school year. So the district goals and the superintendent's goals have actually the longest time horizon because allocating resources to meet those goals is a longer process. The next three boxes are for student goals, teacher goals, and administrator goals. And you can see we start out right after the school year starts in July. This year we had 3 days of school in July with setting goals for students and assessing those at the end of the semester, probably actually at the end of each quarter, and then again at the end of the year. Based on whatever the needs of the students are, the teachers set some goals, and sometimes teacher goals can be collaborative with their site administrators if there's either initiatives of the district or specific areas teachers need to work on. And once administrators have got everybody up and running, they end up setting goals for their unit, whether they're a department and a director or a principal in a school, and working with their direct reports to do their goals so that all of those goals are aligned. And then the administrators really can finish their goals in June, but teachers and kids need to finish up their goals in May. We start collecting data for the district in June because usually the school year is wrapping up there, but pulling all of that data together and compiling it all into a report for a district our size does take several weeks, so that goal cycle looks a little different. The question for the board tonight in this item is if they want to use a calendar year cycle or if they want to shift down to a cycle that looks more like a teacher or administrator goal setting year. The thing is, if that's the case, you're working off of the resources already established when the board does the work of setting the district goals. It really, I think, almost as a matter of preference, because you're going to be here to do the work of setting the resources for district goals, and then you'll still be here when school starts to set goals for yourself, having already known what the resources are. So it probably warrants a little discussion, preference of the board and how they want to run things. We would tonight be taking a sneak peek at some of the data for the calendar year for 2020 and the board's goals to see what kind of data and what kind of progress the board's made on the goals that they set last year. So I'll leave that to you, Mr. President, to lead that discussion.
Thank you. You all can see that, I assume. Do any of you have any comments, thoughts, or ideas that we could discuss here? And just from a personal, go ahead.
Mr. President, this is Mr. Rader. I guess my first comment would be, I think some of our goals were, and I know we'll get into this in the next item, but some of those were just qualitative, but I think we were also trying to align some of our goals with the perceiver data in the monitoring report, if I recall. So, I mean, it might be beneficial to, as we're considering our goals, to be also looking at the data from the previous report that the district puts together. To Dr. Freeman's point, though, I also recognize that we might have some new board members here in January and would want to endeavor to create their own goals. So I don't know if there's a right or a wrong here, but I almost think that we would need to leave this decision almost up to the new board coming in January in some respects.
Well, I'd like to have some of this set up if we wanted to do it on a basis that we've got with a calendar year, that at least some of that may be set up, and we'd have to have some indoctrination or some instruction as to what they've done or what we've got set up for that. Because some of those goals we'll get into that a little bit later, but quarterly goals for us as a board, and then the biannual, the board assessment and some things like that. Or some of the other parts that we would take up, yes, and some of the goals that we would set would have be in line with the things that come from the, what'd you say there, John? The input from the teachers and the staff. But by doing it one way, we wait till the middle of the year to get that done and taken care of for new ones. If we have something at least established, we may not have it all established. We get some preliminary goals, and then as we meet in that first quarter or second quarter to review the goals of the board, we could update that particular time as well. Any other thoughts or comments?
This is Kathy. I agree with Mr. Rader. I think there's new board members coming, or perhaps more new members coming in January, and to do it now, and it's September, almost October, you know, and then a new board comes in and there's brand new goals and directions. I mean, there is something established where people will like it or not, depending on who it is. You know, that's up to them to make the decision what their goals are. So I'm not comfortable really recycling it at this point, since we know for sure there's potentially new board members coming, or maybe not, but at least the election is here. So I don't, for me, this isn't just timing is an issue.
Okay. Any other thoughts there?
Mr. Nielsen.
Please.
One of the options, of course, is to for the board just to adopt the superintendent's or the district's goal cycle. And part of the reason it's designed that way is you have the discussion before the year starts. So when the year starts, the board and the management team have worked together to align resources to meet the goal. So for instance, 5 board members don't normally travel to national school boards meeting. But if there was a year that was a goal, we would want to increase the money set aside in the budget for board member travel. If you set that goal in January and the budget's already set, that means we'd have to move some things around in the budget for people to travel in April, which is when that meeting usually is. So the board could just say the actual year of implementation in that bottom blue box is the school year, July through June. But the goal setting starts way ahead of that. And that's because you start to weigh options for budget priorities and things like that. So the board wouldn't have to have their own cycle necessarily. They could just integrate their work into the other two. The reason this is brought before the board is because elected officials are on a calendar year, but you don't have to do your goal work on a calendar year necessarily. To the point of Mr. Rader and Ms. Reyes, new members are coming in on the middle of the prior board's goal. If you don't do it in the calendar year, then they're coming in the middle of the prior member's goal, but they're also learning their role as a board member. So they have a half year to kind of take stock of everything that's happening, and then right away they're going to get into the discussion for next year. So I think either way has its pros and cons. Probably, you know, by November, December, we would need to know roughly how you were going to want to calendar and collect the data.
This is Amy, and I think that any goals that as a board we have, that should trickle down to the superintendent and to the rest of the district. So I kind of like the idea of adopting the superintendent's goals calendar, because if we as the board come up with a goal that we want to achieve, we may have to have resources or get resources to have it. So having that extra time is important, very similar to what Dr. Freeman said. So I would feel more comfortable adopting, aligning ourselves to the superintendent's goal calendar.
And that's the purpose of this evening, is just Dr. Freeman to put this together to different ideas and look at, and we can do as a discussion, we can discuss and decide how we want to do that. I think Amy, that way. John, is that the same way you're thinking, or Kathy Burlett?
Yeah, this is Mr. Rader. Yeah, that makes perfect sense to do, and I actually agree with Ms. Soshenek's comments. And to Dr. Freeman's point, your new board members probably do need a couple months to get up to speed at least. So providing them that opportunity as they come in to learn about the district and then begin that process of goal setting, you know, in that first or second quarter, and align the overall process with the districts and the superintendents, actually, I think does make quite a bit of sense.
And this is Kathy. I definitely can support that.
Thank you. And Amy, you did for that. Have you got any comments there?
Getting off mute. No, I'm in agreement as well.
Okay, Dr. Freeman, can we adjust that so that our goals would match whatever yours are for the superintendents?
Certainly we can. I mean, we would support the board in doing that. One of the things I think that you have in your goals is to do either a survey or self-evaluation. I can't remember which it is, but it's coming up later, so we'll look at it, about doing your own metric. I think it says in October. So, you know, that might be, yeah, that I think that would work, is if you're going to collect, usually what we'd want to do, if it's the end of the school year and you want to get data from teachers, you get it by the end of the school year. If it's the end of the governance year, that's, you know, October, November, December. The end of the school year is April and May. So you may want to consider that moving forward into future items as you look at the goals you're setting, and if you tie a calendar to any of them, that you're wanting to make this shift in your evaluation cycle. Might be a little off of when we had the Arizona School Boards Association facilitator, and it might be a little off of the association's calendar, but actually make more sense to you. So just as the board moves forward talking about their goals and their data, to keep that in mind about when you might want to do surveys or self-assessments or those kind of things, that they align more with the discussion we had on this item. Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. What we have done for board members tonight, I don't know if this is attached or not. I know some of you did get in and read, and it is. So members will recall, I think everybody was there. I know Ms. Sausnick wasn't feeling very well, so she, this will help jog people's memories, I hope. You were introduced to 5 standards of board practice and 8 characteristics of effective boards. And that was in the form of a PowerPoint presentation and the school board survey, National School Board survey materials you did. So what we have done for you in this document, if we can open that up, please, is we've taken the standards and we've organized these by standard this time, because the survey that you did, the self-assessment survey you did, was by standard. Then we took the 8 characteristics of effective boards and aligned them to your standards. So standard 1 is conduct and ethics. Of the 8 characteristics, characteristic 7 was that effective school boards lead as a united team. You see how that works? We've realigned the 8 characteristics to the standards used in your self-assessment. So for vision, those are characteristics 1 and 2. Effective boards commit to a vision of high expectations, and effective boards have strong shared beliefs and values. Does that make sense to everybody? So this is an easy reference document for you to use as we move forward. Standard 3 was structure, creating conditions for district-wide and student and staff success. Effective boards are accountability driven, spend less time on operation issues and more time focused on policies to help improve student achievement. Effective boards align and sustain resources such as professional development to meet district goals. Standard 4 was in accountability, holding the district accountable for meeting expectations. Effective boards are data savvy and embrace and monitor data. And effective boards, characteristic boards take part in team development and training, and sometimes with their superintendents to build shared knowledge, values, and commitments. The final standard, standard 5, was advocacy, engaging in local community and representing values and expectations. Effective boards have collaborative relationship with staff and the community and establish communications to inform and engage both. Those are not written by us, but adopted from other organizations on effective boardsmanship. And I think we've asked in the past if the board, wanted to adopt these in written, modify, or add to them, and that could be future work of the board if they wanted to do that in another study session. I don't know if there's any additional discussion that needs to happen around this item, Mr. President.
Thank you. Any other comments? Whether that we can use that and look at that in the future as we get back together. If none of you have any comments or discussion on that, we got another point to move to there, Dr. Freeman. And review of the goals that we had set.
Okay, Mr. President, members of the board, item 7, governing board annual board goals progress so far. So the goals are part of the content of the item. These were the ones that you established in the meeting, I think maybe back in November. So they're almost a year old, I think, or maybe we drafted them in November and adopted them in January. There it is, January 28th, in fact, to be specific. So you have on a biannual basis no later than October 30th. So this October would be the off year for you. Next October, you would be doing the ASBA self-evaluation tool with the 5 standards. If you wanted to change to the school year cycle instead of the calendar cycle, you might want to put that toward the end of the year. You don't really need necessarily input from teachers or staff for you to do a self-assessment. So you could do that maybe in June if you wanted to at the end of the school year. And then that data could be compiled for you and presented with all of the other district data. And so you did take that survey one time and you did develop goals around it. And so it would just be a matter of maybe doing that as self-assessment again at the end of this school year, if you want to modify that goal. On an annual basis, board members pursue professional development. This is one where there's not a lot of data. I think there may have been some information sent out to board members on data for goal 2. What we had listed in our files was Mr. Rader attended the delegate assembly, and I think that's coming up again for this year. The only other event attended was the Bolts meeting by Mr. President Nielsen. Members had signed up for the annual conference in April, but it was canceled due to COVID. So board members, the majority of board didn't meet this goal. However, there may be extenuating circumstances. It doesn't mean that you'd want to change the goal. You might want to think about if you want to have this goal in the future, a minimum of 1. If a minimum of 1 is adequate for the board, participation in their professional development, you have both regional collaboration opportunities and professional development seminars, current and emerging trends, policy solutions. I know lately with a lot of the meetings and presentations being done online, you don't have to worry so much about travel time, windshield time, you know, getting there, getting back, and interfering with other things that you have going on in your personal and professional lives. So there might still be some opportunities for board members to engage that goal this year. I'm just going to go on to number 3 unless anybody wants to interject, or maybe you can have, I can go through all 4 and then you can have some discussion afterwards. Mr. President?
Just go ahead. Let's go ahead and go through all 4 of them. And
on a quarterly basis, the board shall hold a study session or special meeting. I think board members received some information on that. And so in 2019, we had 4 special meetings, third quarter, first quarter, and 2 in the second quarter. In 2020, so far we've had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 special meetings, including today on goals, delivery models for reopening in the fourth quarter, budget protocols for reopening, preventing school closure, employee compensation, schedules. So the board's been pretty active in that area. Some of that, again, travel was impeded, professional development was impeded by COVID. I think the number of times the boards had to get together to meet has been partly also due to COVID. So that goal the board is making excellent progress on. You can see, I'm just going to point out at the end of each of these goals, because I think the audience can see them too, is that after each goal we have the standard that the goal relates to, and then the category in the self-evaluation, the item numbers that the governing board used and policies governing board used in developing these goals when they were drafted. So probably some of that would stay consistent even if we made some minor changes to these. If we actually drop a goal and pick up another one, we'd want to redo that work, I think. Then finally, for goal number 4, on a quarterly basis, members shall participate in a minimum of 1 school or district event to interact, communicate, build rapport with teachers, staff, and the community. And the board members will inform staff in advance regarding participation in events and report back on activities subsequent board meeting. I think board members also received some data on this. The standard for attending was 1 per quarter. And the data that we have is broken up by quarter. In 2019, there's a lot of first and second quarter activity. At the beginning of 2020, a little less, probably between 2019 and 2020, the activity of the board is probably 50% of what it was. That's probably largely COVID related. So what happens is we see, it looks like about 10 of those. The issue here in your data would be the report backs are intermittent. So we've got board members first quarter, maybe 10 things, second quarter, maybe 15, third quarter, it's like 2, 4, 6, 8 things, but only 1 report back. Reporting back was best in the second quarter, and that probably is right around when we were talking about these goals, and then it tapered off a little. For the spring, for fourth quarter, there was only a little bit of participation and only 1 report back. There's been 1 report back from the fall, but again, COVID has made it really difficult to attend events, and I don't know if the board wants to discuss that as a form of a goal. it is easier for us to track that activity if it's either on your calendar or in the board minutes where you report when the board makes comments to report that they attended an event or something like that for us to track that. So it's possible there may be more activity than we have record of, but that might be something you want to discuss under goal number 4. And that's all the data we have on that. So I guess, Mr. President, then we can leave it up to you to guide discussion of the board.
Right, so those are the goals that we've had. You've heard the report there from Dr. Freeman. I'm sure they can be looked at and evaluated. If we want to change them or whatever, we'll have an opportunity as we work in with the goals later on this year. Any other comments or questions about what we've had reviewed here?
Perletta has a comment.
Please, Burnett.
Well, so I'm really appreciative of the item being placed on the agenda for our discussion. I think like we would hold anyone accountable, we also need to be held accountable. And which is why, of course, we set this as a goal and as an objective. So I understand that the constitution of the board is going to change come January. However, it seems to me that we should still honor the commitment made to do our evaluation by, is it October 30th?
Okay, we did it, in fact, last year, and I think we decided we would do it biannually. So it would be done every 2 years. Is that how?
Yeah, excuse me, Mr. President, Member Ramos. Yeah, this would be in the biannual schedule. This would be the off year. So it would be every 2 years. Theoretically, if a board member had a 2-year term, they would only do it once. But if you had and I keep hitting this thing twice. I'm used to double tapping to launch something, I guess. Originally, we had it annually, and the board changed it when they revised it to biannual.
Oh, well, that's not good. If I could just follow up, just because there are targets to be reached every year, right? So if on an annual basis, we're going to pursue professional development, or on a quarterly basis, we're going to hold special sessions, it just seems like there's a misalignment with having annual goals, but a biannual review of those goals, because well, other than it just not making sense, I guess, to me now. If we needed to check and adjust, 2 years would pass, right, a whole full period before we would seek to address something that is quite old. But, those are my thoughts. Thank you.
Mr. President, Member Ramos, so the I think, they're the board's goals, but I think that that's the only one that's biannual, and it is the survey people logged on, did electronically, and it's a self-assessment of the board. So it's the board's own reflections on how they're working together on those goals. So there's no reason you couldn't do them annually. I think that maybe if I remember the discussion, there was a sentiment that they may not change, the board's self-reflections may not change that much from year to year, but it's certainly, it's not a very expensive assessment, so it's certainly up to the board if they want to commit the time to do the items.
I think Dr. Freeman, that's the same thing I was going to say. It had like about 50 or 60 questions on it, and it was to assess boardmanship, how we got along, what the focus of the board was, what we should be doing. And it didn't really impact the goals. We still will review the goals on an annual basis. It's just that the one goal that we had here for the board electronic assessment would be done every other year.
This is Kathy. I remember it exactly like that, Curtis. I remember that the questions were more self-reflection, not full goal oriented. So I don't remember that it had any really thing to do with the goals. And so if I recall correctly, that's exactly what I remember. I filled out questions. It basically was self-reflection of myself and how I got along with others and that kind of thing. So so this is being brought because this is the off year to make sure that we're on track. Is that why you're bringing it?
No, it was just one of the goals. We're just reviewing the goals we had set earlier in the year. And just as a reminder that we would do that, not this year, but one of the goals we set up. I mean, when we get together to establish goals, I mean, we can continue to do that with that self-evaluation. I think it was the one that you put numbers 1 through 5 and it came back up with different colors. And if there was a 5, you were good. And if it was a 1, you were bad, or not bad, needed improvement, whatever it might be. And it was just to reflect on that. We didn't think we needed to do that every year. The goals we did need to set every year, and we've only established 4 of them right now. And they don't intertwine with Dr. Freeman's or the schools or anything else. These were the boards that we had. Maybe we need to come up with a couple more as we would meet and look at resources at the beginning of next year.
Mr. President, Member Reyes, I think I think part of the reason that the president and I brought this item is it's not the end of the measurement period. And so whether December was going to be the end or May was going to be the end, June, is a question that we needed to resolve with members, is what the time period we're going to use, because it's by quarter and annually. The other is to make members aware that in the fourth quarter last year and in the first quarter this year, goals you have set have been impacted pretty dramatically. Your data has anyway, by the fact that we're not meeting in school in person, that so much of the districts and boards business is being done virtually, and to see if you wanted to keep your goals or make any adjustments considering that we're doing virtual meetings and distance learning. That's new.
Any other comments?
This is Mr. Rader. I would just, I think these are still good goals and measures for engagement of the board, and a lot of what we discussed as the result of that self-assessment that we did. So I'm in support in keeping these until June, and hopefully the next board comes together in the spring and maybe does a retreat and talks further about what that next goal process would look like. And certainly a commitment from me to do a much better job of reporting out and reporting to staff when I do participate in some of these activities, because I think that's probably an area that we can just improve on as just a report out portion of it. For example, I know I've actually attended 3 different ASBA webinars on different topics, but I'm not so sure I've actually reported that to the board or the staff. So certainly a commitment by me to do a better job on that.
So just what would be the best way to report that? Ada, is there a way to feed it to you? Do we bring it up in board meeting? What's the best way to report back and keep that track?
Let me to answer, Dr. Freeman.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, Mr. President, the way you have been reporting back is during the board comments at the next board meeting. So that's always available.
Okay.
We're usually aware when we register you or pay a fee for you, but otherwise, unless you comment, we might not be aware.
So is that the recommended at the comment section? Is that, because I certainly don't do that. So is that where the recommendation is to report?
Ada, is it best place? I mean, there are multiple places that we can do that. Best place.
It's in the goal.
It's right. Mr. Nielsen, so the goal states that it will be reported at a subsequent board meeting. Or both for goal 2 and for goal 4.
Okay. So at the board meeting, when we do our board statements, that would be the place we could make that comment. Very good. And in the meantime, if we go once or twice, well, we can still keep track of the times that we go into the schools or potentially when we went into the schools there. That would be good to bring forth, and the people, those who are participating have an idea of some of the things that we have done and been attending. Thank you. Any other comments on this discussion? If not, we got one more item here, Dr. Freeman. Item number 8.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. The question before the group is if the board, right now the board has set annual goals, if the board has any interest in setting long-term goals that they might use to guide annual goals. Some of the things that President Nielsen and I talked about were board training goals. For instance, there was a year, some of you who are still on the board will remember when the board president set a long-term goal to get Boardmanship Award, and then I think that was the other president Nielsen wanted to get a cluster of some kind. Isn't there a recognition over multiple years from ASBA? So that would have been a long-term goal that had to do with board training. If there was anything with community outreach, policy review, standards of board practice, or anything like that, it's an open-ended question for discussion. There's boards not under any obligation by policy to do this. It'd just be a matter of preference. And let's see then how the governance cycle works in the district goal setting cycle. I think we're going to connect those together so that question is answered.
And I did get with the ASBA and got some information on certificate of boardsmanship. It's changed a little bit than what it used to be. There's one for just a certificate of orientation, which is going to one of the annual meetings and the conference in December. And the first one, which is called certificate of boardmanship, requires 36 hours of ASBA approved personal development. And that then would be reported and recognized at the annual. That would be 36 hours as I understand it, which is a lot for each member of the board. I've got those goals if we wanted to, not goals. I have that sheet of what is necessary to look at each one of those, and we can maybe look at that as a long-term goal. I'd like to.
Curtis, does it indicate, I know I have a master's of what they call, there's different, I don't know if they still have them. Mine came when they were actually giving hard plaques. I don't know now if they just do more certificates, but they have different levels of boardmanship. Is that still true?
They do, Kathy. Yeah, they do. The first level is certificate of boardmanship. The second level, which is 60 hours, is associate of boardmanship. And then they have master of boardmanship. And then they've done away with the clusters and they talk about superior training accomplishments and recognition, which are STAR awards.
Okay.
And the STAR awards are copper, turquoise, silver, and gold.
So that took the place of the cluster.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Are some of those accumulative? They're not all annual, are they?
No, they're accumulative. And I can get Julie to give me a little bit more detail on it. I just got that and wanted to find out what exactly we needed to do to get back into that.
Yeah, you get them I mean, you have to have like your associates, and you get, it's kind of like college, right? You get one, then you get your next one, then you get your, until you get your, at that time it was a master's. I'm not that familiar with what's past. I know the other, Sandy was wanted the board to get a cluster, but I never achieved my cluster. I just stopped at my master boardmanship. So good to know. I appreciate that, Curtis. Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other thoughts or comments on that? I mean, it's not that we want to come up with those goals right now. It's just some thoughts to put into our minds and as we prepare in the future for goals, whether long-term ones or just the annual ones.
Yeah, this is John. I guess I think it's a noble goal to think about that ASBA, the different levels of ASBA participation. I think personally where I've always had an issue of achieving that kind of involvement is just my other full-time employment and other family obligations. So really the only way to achieve, 36 hours isn't going to be 1 hour webinars at a time, right? They're really encouraging you to participate in day-long conferences, which just are frankly are very difficult with my work and family obligations. So certainly think it's something to continue to look at, and I think that that's one of the goals. Our board goals tries to address that spirit of making sure that we're receiving information and we're up to date on the newest information, while still trying to strike that balance of respecting the fact that we have daytime obligations and may not be able to attend many of the ASBA events.
Of course, and that's again why we've got the goals that we have right now, and this is just here for us to look at. And with the commitments that each of us have, it'll be difficult. But with we may still be able to commit, being in school and let the kids see in us what's going on that way too.
I often tell people, member Rader, that I would be a lot skinnier if going to the gym was my job.
All righty. Any other comments along that line? So for now, Dr. Freeman's reviewed with us what the goals have been for this year. And we can continue to work on those between now and the end of the year and reevaluate and get something up right after the first of the year.
Well, Mr. President, if I understood the discussion correctly, so we have goals that we're going to continue through the end of this school year, the 2021 school year.
Okay.
But the next cycle will start this fall when we set, collect data and set priorities for the fiscal 22 year. So actually, the goals for next school year will be established over the December, January meeting. So it'll be a look ahead. And these will stay in force till May, but the discussion for fiscal 22 will happen over the winter months and into
Very good. Yep.
spring.
Is that how the rest of you understand that?
That was my understanding.
Thank you.
This is Amy, and that was my understanding as well.
Great.
Mine as well.
Thank you, sir.
You looking for my confirmation too? Yes.
Thank you for that. No. All right. Is there anything else we need to discuss here tonight? I think that was the whole purpose of our special meeting tonight, is just review those, see where we're at, how we can continue to report those things and get that cycle put together.
See you again in 2 weeks.
And if there's no other comment, Dr. Freeman reminded me that we'll be back together again in 2 weeks, October the 6th, something like that.
Sounds good.
Thank you. If there's no other comments, thoughts, discussion, could I have a motion to adjourn for this evening?
This is Amy, and I move that we adjourn at 6:49.
Thank you, Amy.
This is Kathy. I'll second that.
Thank you, Kathy.
Mr. Nielsen,
Aye.
Mr. Rader,
Hi.
Dr. Ramos,
Hi.
Mrs. Reyes,
Bye.
Mrs. Sashnik.
Aye.
Thank you all. Appreciate you for being here.
Have a good
Thank
evening.
you. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.